Hello, Alex Sager, David Weaver, Physics 112, online with the summer 2012. So this is week 3. My good camera actually broke, so I'm actually just using my webcam this week. So yeah, week 3 summary. Start with what I did this week. Go through the list. There's a number of LiveScribe lectures, which I thought was pretty cool. Definitely interesting to see David go through the notes, and it was like being in a real class. Really cool. So we did comparison between electrical and gravitational, fields versus forces, resistors, semiconductors, the interesting video about statistics in our world, and magnetism. So what I learned was that one of the interesting things I learned about each of these topics is that gravitational force is not actually, well, relatively speaking, not as strong as one might think in comparison to many other forces like electrical force. Is the other one. Field versus forces. That lecture there gave a very good example and really helped me wrap my brain around the idea of what we're talking about here with forces, using essentially the fabric and the different size balls to show the hill or the valley in the field of the forces. And another thing we talked about was the video. Definitely good discussion online with my fellow classmates about the different statistics that really stuck out to us. One of the ones that I mentioned was Google and how widely it's used today. Many people think that maybe it's a bad thing that we don't use books, but why use a book? We can save paper, I guess. We can use online services, so I don't think that it's a bad thing, but it's interesting to see that the change that we are going through is seen as positive and negative. Just depends on who's looking at it. I guess that's with everything. Anyways, another thing was that magnetism, something we talked about, things we needed to go through. So I went through and I looked at permanent magnets, which I found were materials that can be magnetized by an external magnetic field, and they can sustain that ability to be a magnet. In comparison to that, one of the things was an electromagnet. It's widely used in many things like motors, generators, those certain parts of cars, MRI machines. And one of the advantages of the electromagnet over the permanent magnet was that it can be controlled by the amount of current going through the electromagnet. Therefore, it makes it more useful. And the way that it works is that it uses an electric current through a wire and concentrates a magnetic field in a coil around an iron core. So one of the examples that I found was like a starter in your car. Just put electricity through it, you can get the thing moving, and rather than having it always moving with a permanent magnet. So that is the summary of this week. In addition to those things, we also had the discussion boards, and just have a few questions here. As far as working with the things like the resistors and circuits and the forces and all of this stuff, will we be quizzed on this at all? Tested? Should we be practicing more on our own with understanding things like the circuit diagrams and all of these equations? Or is just the basic concept of what we used it for so far good enough? Just for grade-wise is all. I'm just curious. Also, something more specific to what we're talking about this week is, do forces like gravity and magnets vary significantly in any other parts, in different parts of the world? I'm just wondering about that. So here is showing you my notes. Again, sorry that it's low tech. A good camera's not working quite as well as the other two. So this is the only other camera I have. So thank you, and see you next week.